Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Committee of the Whole Municipality of Jasper to order at 9:30. I would like to also begin by acknowledging that the Municipality of Jasper is on Treaty 6 and 8 territories, as well as the Jasper House Métis District. This land is the traditional territory, meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route, and home for the Deneza, Assiniboine-Winnewac, Assiniboine-Neha, Nehewak, Anishinaabe, Secwepemc, Stoney Nakoda, Mountain Métis, and Métis. The municipality of Jasper acknowledges the land to honor the relationship Indigenous peoples have with this land, to remind us of our responsibility and obligations to this place and to Indigenous peoples, and to affirm our accountability to the ongoing impacts of colonization that continue to affect Indigenous peoples. The past few months have been as challenging as any municipality could reasonably expect. So I'd like to take a moment to express my appreciation and admiration to the Mayor, my council colleagues, and all municipal administration for their steadfast and unwavering commitment to ensuring the well-being of Jasper residents. And I just wanted to express my appreciation for that. So I'll go on then to if they're calling for any additions to the agenda. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. What I'd like to do is add item number 7.7, a verbal update on the Jasper Business Recovery Program, sponsored by Prairie Scan.
Thank you for that. Any other additions? Could I have Sorry, Councillor DeMola.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I'd like to add 11.2 and 11.3 in camera. Both of them land. Please and thank you.
Could I have a motion to accept these additions to, yes, Councillor Moda?
Yeah, I move that we accept today's Committee of the Whole agenda as amended.
All in favor? Looking at December 10th, Committee of the Whole minutes, is there any business arising from those minutes? Okay, then we move on to delegations. 5.1, we have Recovery Alberta, we have Ryan Burge here in person and Lois Ryan Otley on Zoom. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for having us here this morning. My name is Ryan Burge, and I'm here representing Recovery Alberta Addiction Mental Health Services, and I work here at the local clinic in Jasper. And joining me here as well virtually is Lois Ryan Otley, who is our Director of Rural Services.
Good morning.
Okay. As with any Recovery Alberta presentation or public communication, we do also begin with land acknowledgement, as Deputy Mayor Waxer so eloquently put at the beginning of the meeting. We would also like to express our acknowledgement from a place of gratitude and respect in regards to the land acknowledgement you see here on slide 1. So the purpose of us being here this morning is to highlight some of our services that we've been providing post-wildfire in July. We'd also like to increase some of the awareness around our available programs and what we're currently offering. And we'd also like to share some of our more recent initiatives and activities that we've been working on. We'd also like to open up dialogue and communication with you here this morning for any questions, concerns, comments, etc. that you have in regards to our services and in regards to identification of gaps or driving what we just decide to do ongoing. So our activities to date, we've deployed multiple roving teams. We were made up of staff throughout the North Zone of our addiction and mental health professionals who were available within the reception and welcome centers, as well as working closely with the Rubicon teams here in Jasper, both supporting that team as well as residents and having information, resources, and services available to those residents who are accessing Rubicon services. We've also provided a wide variety of psychosocial presentations within the community. Some of those have been standalone, specifically coming from Recovery Alberta. Many of them were in collaboration with some of our fellow community stakeholders and people that we work and organizations that we work closely with, delivering education, prevention, promotion of not only services, but covering topics that have been identified as needs in the community relevant to the wildfire and in particular specific to both mental health and addiction services. We've maintained our regular service hours as well, also providing some additional hours in our clinic. So our clinic is located in the community health wing of the hospital, and all our services are confidential and covered under Alberta Healthcare. And I'll speak a little bit more about those as we move on here. So community health and addiction treatment. So if you do show up at our clinic here in the community health wing, we do provide services by qualified addiction and mental health professionals, providing a wide range of assessments, individual, family, education, and support, both on the addiction side of things, in regards to substance use, process addiction, as well as mental health services on that side as well. I think one of the most important probably words in regards to what our community has faced over the recent months is adaptability. And one way we've been able to successfully adapt some of our services has been through providing walk-in opportunities for individuals. So pre-wildfire, people would be encouraged, as they still are, or they're still able to connect through our centralized intake system where they make a phone call to set up an appointment. People can still continue to do that, but one way we've adapted is having walk-in opportunities where people can simply just present themselves at the clinic. We're currently offering those between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And those are on a first come, first served basis, but we definitely try our best to accommodate anybody who shows up, and we'll make sure that they're seen in the clinic and services are provided for them. We also continue to provide prevention and promotion services within the community. So we're continuing to meet with stakeholders, listen to our clients about what might be needed in the community in regards to presentation style or education style, promotion, prevention services that can promote wellness, promote our services, or touch on topics that might be of interest or appropriate for what our community might need. So apart from the services in the clinic where you can come see a therapist or a counselor, we also work closely with some of our external service providers, some of which are within Recovery Alberta teams or within the community or neighboring or partnering communities. So that can include psychiatric services, so connecting to a psychiatrist, crisis team services. There's also multidisciplinary intensive treatment services that we can refer clients and patients to, as well as detox, residential addiction treatment, opiate dependency programs that we have available, as well as inpatient psychiatry services as well, are all just some of the partnering services that we might be referring individuals to upon assessment or upon people coming into our clinic and seeing us in person. We also refer as well or have available, apart from the in-person where people can show up or physically access us, we have virtual therapists available as well, if that's something that's more comfortable for people that they would prefer to do from their own home or as well. You'll see in front of you, we did provide a couple of handouts this morning. So the first one is more localized handouts, so it's specific to Jasper addiction and mental health. There's been different variations of this poster that has been put around town since the re-entry to the community. The only thing that has really changed essentially is some of our hours. So you'll have the most current and up-to-date hours, as I mentioned. So we're currently Monday to Friday with services available and some additional phone numbers on there as well. And the other piece of paper that you'll have there is more wider reaching, so more north zone addiction programs and mental health programs that can be available for residents of Jasper. We also have outlined on there a couple of helplines that are important to take note of. As I mentioned, we are Monday to Friday, so if there is ever a need for individuals or residents to call to access any type of addiction or mental health support, there are trained staff available 24/7 on those numbers outlined there, as well as the Counseling Alberta contact information and information in regards to the virtual opiate dependency program. There's also a link to some websites on there as well that people can search out online with additional resources as well. So some of our next steps, some of our management teams have been working closely with the Red Cross in regards to grant application, and Lois Ryan, who has joined us this morning, would all speak more in depth in regards to what that process currently looks like and some of our future plans in regards to that Red Cross grant. We've continued to build Jasper Recovery 5-year plan, so we recognize that upon re-entry, in many ways, our work is just beginning. So we're going to continue to do work and adapt as needed for years to come to hopefully best serve residents. We're also using service data, continuing to meet with our fellow stakeholders here that provide similar services and continue to plan as we move forward. And continue to build community capacity. So what we identify as gaps or needs in the community, hopefully we can fill those gaps when appropriate by identifying what those needs might be in regards to addiction and mental health and where Recovery Alberta can assist. So some contact info here for you. If you leave here today and should a question arise or you have something to pass along or any type of communication at all, we have Yvonne Sanpar-Pawa, who is the Area 4 Manager for Recovery Alberta. You'll find her contact information there. You're invited and welcome to reach out at any point in time that you would like. And of course, Lois Ryan, the Director of Rural Services, who is joining us here today. That's just some information for you to have for the future. And with that, we open it for any questions that you might have or anything at all.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. We are now in probably month 5 after coming back to the community. Are you seeing the same levels or gradually reducing levels of individuals seeking assistance, or have those levels maintained a certain consistency?
I would say we've seen more of an uptick as of recent. I think in the initial stages, there were a lot of things and there were a lot of resources as well in the community at that point in time, with the reception centers. So we were seeing people in different ways. I think now that we no longer have reception centers and that we are now mainly working out of the clinic, I think that has been more. It's been more of that type of reactionary service than the work that we're seeing. I think additionally, we've had a lot of success with the walk-in availability, so people just simply showing up to see us. So I would say our work is starting to be probably more on the upswing of that type of service.
And if I can just add that it is exactly as we anticipated. Initially, residents are typically concerned about housing and food and security and those pieces, and that's their focus. After a while, so we do anticipate about February to begin to see more of an increase. So as Ryan has rightly said, we've begun to see a slow increase in uptake for our individual services, and we anticipate that by February, March, those numbers will significantly increase.
Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Deputy Supervisor. Just to follow up on Councillor Lake's question. Do you find that as individuals arriving on their own, or the referrals to the crisis and community outreach?
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight that there are different ways that people do access it. I would say there is a mix currently of, and I think that's speaks to the importance of us continuing to do a lot of the promotion and prevention work, because oftentimes people are accessing us through being supported by others. So empowering them to know what services are available, how to access them, how to support people to get there, to be able to see us. So people are coming in that way. We are having people show up on their own or call in on their own. We also work, because we work based out of the hospital, closely with the emergency department as well as acute care. So we do have individuals being that way also. So I'd say a mix between individuals presenting on their own as walk-in and individuals presenting as support. I think another piece to highlight too is we also have people coming in to access our services who are in a supportive role, and the stress and tension that can be associated with that type of situation can then be a way that a person might recognize or identify that that's a reason for them to come in and see us as well, those types of situations.
Go ahead, Councillor Keller.
The demographics, do you find that it's families, younger people, or do you have a mix with seniors as well?
Yeah, we're pretty wide ranged, I would say. It's definitely a mix that way also. And that's what we've tried to do with the prevention and promotion side of things also, is connecting with those individual life stages also. So there's an awareness, yeah, definitely a mix.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxter. Thank you for the report, much appreciated, timely. I want to take an opportunity to try and get you to look at the reverse side of this, and that is those that you're not seeing, that perhaps you wish that you were. It seems to me there is a large number of people in the community who would not self-identify as having a mental health issue. And when it's combined with mental health and addictions, I think a lot of people see that as a conjunct band, and they would disassociate themselves from that. Whether you like it or not, there is still a stigma attached to an admission that you have a mental health issue. So there are people out there who would not say they're in crisis, but they are in turmoil. They're worried about the things that were mentioned, food security, housing security or insecurity, just the general uncertainty of life. And is there a strategy to get those people to come forward to get assistance just with emotional well-being that is not categorized as a mental health issue? Because that in itself, it seems to me, is a limitation. And I'm only viewing this from the outside, you're on the inside, but is there any sense that there is a large cohort that doesn't yet understand how they can get assistance with coping with matters that are just the reality of the increased burden on everyone's life created by these circumstances that is not reflective of any personalized mental health issue?
I think that's a great great question to bring forward, Mayor, and I think that's something that we've identified even before July as something for us to work on as a clinic and as a service. I guess there's a couple things I think of there. So one, I think sometimes in a community, especially a community like Jasper, oftentimes people have the perception that they need to be in an acute or an intense amount of struggle in order to come in to see us. And we're trying to kind of squash that myth that there's no real wrong reason. You're not going to be turned away. So we welcome people who are having intense or acute struggles, but that doesn't have to be the only reason for somebody to come in. So as much as we can do that through our prevention and promotion work, we're trying to do that. The other pieces that we're looking at, apart from just having people come into our clinic, we recognize, which we've been doing, but we're going to continue to do, is being available in the communities through some of those programs. So that's when we're looking at things like groups or education programs, whatever it might be, where we can be out and it's not having that stigmatized, which, as you mentioned, we don't want there to be, but we recognize that there is, and it can be uncomfortable for people to come into an addiction at a health clinic, and we want to help bridge that gap and make that process as easy as possible. But for anybody who's not willing to do that, we want to adapt as best we can. So that might be virtual services, or that might be education programming, where they get to actually meet the people who are delivering the services. Hopefully that builds some of the rapport and eases some of that comfort for them as well. And Lois, I'm not sure if you have anything to add there as well.
Absolutely. I think that that's one of the reasons we've been working very closely with some of our partners within Jasper. So for example, Cause, one of our great partners, through Cause, when people feel more comfortable to go that route, Cause then informs us as to what they're hearing, what they're hearing from the people, what perhaps presentations or group presentations would be beneficial. And so then we go ahead and create that in partnership with them. And so part of it is that people don't have to come to the hospital or our clinic. They can have a meeting at Cause. They can have a meeting at the aquarium center or, aquatic center. So we can have our presentations at different locales. One of the other things that I think is very important is, and please forgive my voice, I'm still recovering, is our Canadian Red Cross application. What we have asked for is a team of 2 that will be able to go into the community. And number one, we want this team to be going door to door. Because as you rightly say, a lot of people are not going to come to us. And while we connect with our partners and expect that we will get connections that way, we also believe that going door to door is going to be vital. There are a number of people for various reasons that won't even come out and identify themselves. So we will be doing that. This team that we're anticipating securing shortly through the Canadian Red Cross grant will also work collaboratively with, for example, the Jasper Pathfinder program. We'll be doing training, building capacity with Jasperites so that they can better support their neighbors and friends. So that's another way of identifying individuals who are in need. So we are looking at quite a full circle of opportunity to connect with Jasperites so that the majority of the residents in Jasper know that there's help, can reach out when they need it, how they need it. And the last thing I'll probably add is that what we were also looking at is the name of our various presentations. We don't want to say, this is for your mental health. We will couch it in ways that will be sexy, provocative, that people may find interesting and want to come out and hear more about it. So to your point, I think absolutely we have to look at a multifaceted approach to ensure that we can reach all of our Jasper community members.
Thank you both very much for those responses. And just in closing, I don't have another question, but just a compliment. I thought that your efforts with Rubicon were outstanding. So when people were at their property, dealing with that emotional distress of sifting through their belongings, I'm aware from personal experience that individuals showed up from Alberta Mental Health and Addictions, from Recovery Alberta, and just met people where they were. And I thought that was a brilliant strategy because there was no stigma attached to that. They just came in and spoke to people. If you can find other ways to engage with people in that sort of fashion, I thought that was really excellent. So thank you for that.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Webster. I did have a question around Red Cross, and I already got the answer before I asked, but I did want to thank you for the presentation and the work that you do in the community. And what an amazing partner Red Cross has been for Jasper.
Councillor Jamal.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate you being here today in front of us and maybe helping get a little bit more information out in the community for people that are watching this that might need, you know, some of the services that are provided. And I think it's great, like the more exposure we get, and like you said, and just to go on with what the mayor was saying, I think there are a lot of people in the community that could probably use some help, even though it's not acute or you know, extremely urgent at the time. I find that any help that we can get, just even talking to people is very helpful. So this is good. I think probably enough, but I like it when I'm on the same wavelength as the mayor. I had written down stigma here with terminology, and one of the things that, you know, I've been noticing a little bit more and more through time in recent history is that a lot of the terminology is changing from mental health to mental wellness. And I'm just wondering if that, you know, is kind of steers the stigma a little bit. And is there, are there changes coming? Is that part of the transition wording as far as political correctness goes, or just maybe trying to get a broader, you know, intake of it?
Yeah, I think that wording is definitely important in regards to promotion of services. I think it's definitely something that we need to consider, as Lois mentioned, when we're delivering some of our presentations, even though they might be a specific topic like anxiety or addiction or whatever it might be. I think the presentation doesn't necessarily have to be called that. Even us being called now rebranded to Recovery Alberta. Recovery is a pretty popular word right now in Jasper. It means a lot of different things. So I think we can probably expand on that a little more to be hopefully less stigmatizing to whatever it is we might be offering. Absolutely.
I would like to add to that, you know, it's very interesting to me, my children who would come home and share with me, oh yeah, you know, my friend here is seeing her therapist and she's working on this and that. And I would say that the stigma really is the older age group that continues to struggle. The younger age group, they are perfectly fine recognizing that they're dealing with their issues, whatever it may be. But you are right. The movement to the word mental wellness indicates that we all are working on our well-being, and part of that well-being is that mental piece. So I think in times past, when we talk about mental health, people attributed that to being, you know, psychotic or really in pretty bad shape. The bottom line is we can look at mental health on a continuum. And if we're all going to work towards our mental wellness, then we can work and partner with each other. And if indeed we have more serious struggles, we want to encourage that there is no shame to deal with your more serious mental health issues as well. But the fact that we all are working to improve our mental wellness makes us all together. There's no separation. We're all working toward the same goal. And I guess maybe one last thing I would say is, so part of our partnership, we've been meeting with the school principals. We've been meeting with, we're now meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, and some of these other partners to make sure our information is going out and they can share with their members, again, trying to catch people from all different spheres and pushing that concept of let's work on our mental wellness because it's going to help us all in the end.
But that's really good, and I appreciate that, and that's important to know, and I really like the way you answered that. You know, another thing too is I really like to thank the JRCC as well in conjunction with you guys, because I know that they've been working really hard, and they've come forward to council through our director, and you know, gave us updates on the services that are out there, and I think that's helped run, you know, the knowledge and the availability to your services. So again, kudos to them as well as you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I might just take the moment now to express appreciation, and nice to see you again, Lois. I wanted to just make the comment that through community outreach services, they use the term the magical mix of providing support and being involved in the programming, which helps reduce the stigma. So I wanted to express appreciation for the creative ways you're looking at engaging with the residents, because I think that really helps to reduce stigma and increase comfort level with accessing assistance when required. So thank you. If there are no other questions, I wondered if I could have a councillor make the motion that we accept this report for information. Councillor Hall, all in favor? Thank you so much. We very much appreciate your time and expertise.
Thank you so much. And again, if you have questions, Ryan is there, or you can reach out to me as well. Good morning.
Move on to correspondence. CAO, given is there any correspondence that we're unaware of? Okay, thank you. We'll move then to 7.1, the rewrite of B109, fiscal controls and financial reporting policy.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Administration is here today with some recommended updates to policy B109. On October 1st of this year, Council passed a motion directing administration to bring forward updates to the policy to provide for differential spending authority for the Director of Recovery, recognizing that the Director of Recovery mainly works in the area funded by DRP funds, Disaster Recovery Program funds. I think that there was an acknowledgement that while we had our municipal budget process upcoming, that recovery objectives and actual specific projects within recovery may be more fluid than we would be used to in normal municipal operations. So we have an update to the policy attached to the package for you. It's marked up to show the changes. But very broadly, the intent of the changes is to provide that authority, ensuring that the director is able to work within the envelope set by the DRP program. Council will remember that you have actually seen the DRP program submission, approved the submission of about $74 million. And so the director has the authority to work within essentially that budget envelope and the envelope provided by the municipal budget. There are reporting obligations, and obviously the importance of having this policy in place ensures that that accountability is maintained, while also supporting the flexibility that will be needed for recovery operations. I am happy to answer any questions. I think from an administrative perspective, this is quite a straightforward update and amendment. Again, that seeks to find that balance between accountability and controls, while also enabling administration to work effectively and in a timely manner. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from councillors?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I have a lot. All fairly innocuous, I think. Just in the request for decision, under inclusion considerations, it doesn't make it into the policy, but I'm concerned about the suggestion there that there will be equitable access to disaster recovery resources. The policy itself and the purpose for the policy don't actually speak to equitable access, and I don't think they're intended to. So I'm concerned about a suggestion that somehow others will be able to access this. This is about stewardship of financial resources, and I'm content that the actual policy says that, but I was confused to see an inclusion statement that talks about equitable access that isn't actually reflected. So if you want to address that, go ahead. Again, it's not part of the policy, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but it was a disconnect that hit me.
Your worship, administration is obligated to come up with some kind of inclusion considerations as part of our template for reports. So with that said, the perspective here is that by ensuring that decisions are made in a transparent manner and that there are controls in place, it prevents the risk of inequitable delivery of services. The idea being that council, has ultimate authority, and that there's a reporting process, and so if anything untoward was happening, you would be able to see it. And so, this eliminates the risk of administration choosing a preferred group to dedicate resources towards, because ideally the decision should be made in an accountable and transparent manner. So maybe it's a bit of a stretch, which is a part of the problem that we face with coming up with inclusion considerations. It's important to ask the question regularly, but when we're talking about an administrative policy that's really about a procedure for how you do things, it can be a bit of a challenge to come up with how does this impact people sort of outside the organization. But I think it's fair to say that asking that question makes us sort of sharpens our mind, make sure we're thinking about how the ways that we do things can impact people. And in this case, the idea of saying there needs to be controls in place and there needs to be transparency so that things don't go a direction that council would have expected. That supports the better outcomes.
Thank you for that. If I may continue, just some minor questions again. And these are not even changes, just things that I found because I forced to read this policy again. Under section 3 guiding principles, the second bullet, expenditures must be reasonable. That could be interpreted as reasonable in amount, or it could be interpreted as a sensible thing to spend money on. And I just wonder whether there could be some reflection on what is actually meant to clarify that term. In section 4, there is discussion or reference to the director of the Joint Recovery Coordination Center. My understanding, and I stand to be corrected, is that because it's a joint recovery center, there are 2 directors. And so I wonder whether there would be any utility in identifying that we're talking about the municipal director. I'm not entirely sure how the system works, but I think that for municipal expenditures, it would be Director Fark. For expenditures by Parks Canada, it would be their director. There is a notion difference, and I just draw that to your attention. And then down in section 5, capital budget authority, I wonder whether it would be worth identifying in subsection 5.4 that phrase or that clause is subject to subsection 5.6. So in section 5.4 is quite broad, and it gives that latitude to, a 10% adjustment, which, for example, for the activity center renovation could be as much as $2 million. But then later, it seems to me that it is limited to an amount, the lesser of 10% or $350,000. But unless 5.4 is said to be subject to 5.6, I'm not sure how that is interpreted. And if we have a very large project, 10% is a very large number, and it's way bigger than the limit that is otherwise there. So I wonder whether we could add some wording to make it clear that that would not be the case. And finally, I thought, there is reference, and I skipped over it, I apologize, to scope 5.3. The scope of a project cannot be amended without council approval. I think that's fine, but in the definitions, there is no scope, and so at what point does change become within scope or out of scope? It's difficult to know what might come back to council. So if one item in a large project increased in value, and you had to replace, say, an elevator for something else, like an ice plant, is that in scope or out of scope? I mean, how do we know what the scope is? Can we have a definition that would help to interpret 5.3? And those are my questions.
Your worship, I'm going to take those in sort of reverse order, and I'm smiling about the discussion about scope and the definition, because I thought of something that might be relevant for you and might not work for everybody else. But there's a United States Supreme Court decision that says, "I'll know it when I see it." And so I think scope might be a little bit like that. It's not defined because it's a commonly used word. And so, our practice and procedures and policies is not to define sort of words with commonly understood meanings. We define words that are maybe more specific to the municipal government sphere. So we could look at defining that a little bit better, but I make a bit of a joke of that because, the example that you gave, well, an elevator for an ice plant, well, I would say that's a change in scope. I know it when I see it, like that US Supreme Court decision on another matter. So I don't know that I have an answer to that one specifically right now. Going in reverse order, your point about 5.4, perhaps in addition to say, to lead in to 5.4, to start off by saying, subject to the amounts described in section 5.6, directors upon recommendation may authorize. So that would sort of better link the total dollar values with this authorization. And then the other, I think we can fairly simply, so making these as suggestions for potential amendment, the committee could choose to pass the budget as amended with these amendments. 4.1, we could say, including provision for disaster recovery activities overseen by the municipal director of recovery. So I think we'd use the director of recovery in a few spots, but I think that, the municipal director of recovery is probably the clearest way to say that, to make that distinction suggested. So really just adding the word municipal in 4.1 or anywhere else that director of joint recovery may show up in the document. I think that would probably handle some of those concerns you identified, other than the scope one, which is probably not related specifically just to the recovery activities, probably a broader discussion that maybe we could take on another time. Until then, we'll leave it to be a scope change when we see it.
And the one that you didn't address, maybe intentionally, was expenditures must be reasonable. But whether that's reasonable in direction or amount, whether that is something, or maybe it's just, again, you'll know it when you see it. I'm just not sure how that is to be interpreted by others.
But your worship, I think it's a fair discussion, you know, the definition of reasonableness will obviously be in the eye of the beholder. But at this level in our policy, you know, the intent here is to describe some guiding principles for all staff. Principles, you know, sort of have to be at that upper level where they probably don't get the level of definition. The rest of the policy is intended to define what reasonableness looks like, by providing specific dollar value limits and other sort of constraints. I'm not sure that I don't think that today we can define reasonableness in another way. I think that might be something to take up with the policy review committee at a point in the future, but the council helpful to support.
Well, if I may, I'll trump your US reference with reference to the House of Lords, who did define reasonable. Reasonableness is the man on the platinum autobus. So
On the what? Sorry?
on the platinum autobus, so the guy riding the bus
Yeah,
to work every day, that's the definition of reasonable.
okay.
What he would think about something. I guess now you'd have to say he or she.
Hey,
Councillor Demoted.
Renee, no, I appreciate that, and you know, like, when you look at a medical team or, you know, even a surgical team, when they go in, you're gonna have the person there that is the chief or the person that has the most experience or knowledge, and I'm very grateful. That, you know, we have the mayor here that can go in here and do some brain surgery on these things, because it's quite impressive, and I think, like the mayor, words are important, and you know, I learn a lot by the things that he catches. So at the risk of sounding too obsequious here, I'm grateful that you address those things. As far as the inclusion piece goes, I had somebody that called me up the other day and was looking at watched our council meeting last week and asked me the purpose of that, and you know, is there some redundancy there? And I said, I'd actually prefer to see it there on everything. So it becomes habitual for everyone, like regardless if it's administration to think about, you know, that, and whether it's relevant to that particular recommendation or not. I think that filter is very important in every aspect that we go through as far in our decision-making process. So I'm glad it's there. And just again, thank you very much for catching all those items, and I know that the word reasonable shows up in another bylaw. I think it's our nuisance bylaw, and you know, what's considered by a reasonable person, and I've always questioned that, and I guess if it's the person riding the bus, then I should probably start riding the bus a little bit more.
Councillor Millman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wax. I do have a question for a little clarity, and in a lot of the documents here, we talk about DRP funding. So this is funding that's established and we're managing the spending of that funding. I go down to item 5.9. And it talks about, except where a capital project has been financed through the issuance of debentures. And so a lot of this policy talks about funding that's granted to us. And I wouldn't think we would need debentures because the funding is there. And so I'm wondering about the point about 5.9, and is that in there? Because it was in the policy originally. And there may be some borrowing that we might need to be doing that wasn't in the DRIP financing, and that's the only place I see debentures referred to in the document.
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Melnick. So that point is unchanged from the previous version, the one that's currently on the website. So no, administration hasn't updated that with relation to sort of recovery objectives. At this time, administration doesn't expect to be doing any recovery projects through venture financing, so that's not being contemplated. If I'm reading this, my interpretation would be that this point is actually about what happens when there are funds allocated to a capital project that you don't end up spending. In the case of a debenture, you would, or, yeah, you would be a part of it. Many of our other projects are funded through monies that we have in hand already, and the idea here is, you know, what happens to those unspent funds that we already had in the bank account or in reserve, and this point says that they should be returned to their originating reserve upon the closure of the project. So, you know, we complete a project, it's under budget. What happens to the money? Does the department just get to keep it and buy new chairs for everybody, or, you know, something else? And of course not. That capital, those capital dollars, any excess capital dollars that are remaining go back into the capital fund so that can be reallocated through future budget processes. So that's I guess, what does this actually mean? That's what it actually means. It was not changed, and we don't suspect that we'll be using debenture borrowing for any capital projects related to recovery.
Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate that. And it just ties into during the budget discussions, we had a number of capital projects that were from previous years, and there are small dollar amounts that are in there, which we're going to want to roll forward back into reserves, and I'm sure that'll be part of the process here during this year.
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Melnick, that's exactly right. Each year, Director Malinchuk brings forward a recommendation for capital carry forwards. We do that into the new year. That allows for us to receive any outstanding invoices at the close of the year. So we actually do it as a part of the, you know, sort of concurrent with the year-end closure and audit processes. So we can bring forward that full list after we sort of managed to get all the last, you know, invoices in through contractors and everything. And then we're in a position to be able to say where the actual sort of year is finalized for capital projects. We bring forward that recommendation about any funds that we either need to carry forward to finish a capital project that continues to be in progress, or where we can close out of a project.
Thank you. Appreciate the answers, and looking forward to continuing on this. Sorry, I went a little bit sideways with the capital.
Councillor Demoted.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just wondering here, with the proposed amendments made, I looked over and I thought I saw maybe the mayor constructing a motion. So I was just gonna say that, do we actually need this to come back to another committee for a revisit, or could we just forward it to council with proposed amendments? Because I think we can make a decision with the things that were prescribed today.
Confirming changes. I might just confirm with CAO, given, I think you suggested a change to municipal director in 4.1, and then the subject to 5.6 to the start of 5.4, and that would be it. So with that, my motion would be that committee recommend that council approve the rewrite of policy B 109 fiscal controls and financial reporting policy with amendments as discussed at committee January 14 to articles 4.1 and 5.4. And in that way, it could come back for approval to council next week, as is with changes to those two articles.
Any debate? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. We move on then to 7.2, traffic bylaw safety considerations, wildfire impacted sidewalks.
Acting Director Mans is going to take this item, and he is on screen.
Good morning, Council, and I'll just overview this report for information on the changes to the treatment of sidewalks to accommodate pedestrians in those areas that have been impacted by the wildfire. And so MOJ has created different levels of service to ensure that pedestrians can safely travel to and from their destinations through areas that have been impacted by the wildfire. And so in a number of so there's two maps that I'll focus on. The first being figure 1 that shows the areas and properties impacted by the wildfire and how the sidewalks adjacent to those are being treated. In cases where properties on both sides of the street have been destroyed, and often the street lights as well, those sidewalks are effectively closed to pedestrian use, and alternate routing has been provided for. Figure 2 shows the treatment of sidewalks throughout the community now, indicating that in areas adjacent to properties that have been destroyed, the MOJ is now clearing those sidewalks and taken on that responsibility. Those are those areas shown in green. In other areas, the parking lane has been closed where the sidewalks aren't accessible as an extension of a pedestrian routing. And the parking lane is being cleared and used for pedestrians as well. The figure 2 also shows areas that have not been impacted by the wildfire. In purple there, where the leaseholders will continue to clear their own sidewalks, and also areas that have been part of the normal sidewalk clearing of operations shown in blue there. So it really, that figure 2 shows how all the sidewalks throughout the community are being treated over the course of the winter, and ensuring that pedestrians can safely navigate throughout the community on the sidewalk system. So be pleased to answer any questions that council may have with respect to how these sidewalks are being treated over the course of the winter impacted from the wildfire, noting that the costs associated with the additional levels of service and the snow clearing and ice control that is being provided by the MOJ is disaster recovery funded.
Questions, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you for that. Just a couple questions that came to mind here. I know we clear these sidewalks with a drivable sweeper that's driving on the sidewalk. That sweeper lifts up and lifts down, and I just find it a little petty in a couple scenarios, or it might seem a little petty. Whereas, like in particular, Patricia Street, you know, we're going to be clearing almost all of Patricia Street 700 block, yet then lifting the sweeper for one house and then dropping it again and carrying on. So, you know, I'm sure that probably wouldn't happen, and the operator would just keep the sweeper down and carry on. But I would hope that, you know, the operator would use kind of what's that? Anyway, but so I would hope that we could have a few, or one or two, so let's call it Patricia and Geeky, you know, like might as well just carry on the rest of that block. Maybe the south side of Turret as well. You know, the operator's driving in that direction anyway. Why lift it and then place it back down? And most likely probably drive it where it's still and pack that stuff down.
Yeah, that's a good point. That practically we wouldn't lift the sweeper for one house when we're clearing the rest of the block. And I'll make a note to ensure that if that hasn't been happening, that it will.
Yeah, no, only due to the map is what I identified it. I'm not suggesting it has happened or anything like that, but we might as well just, have one clear path. Maybe the individuals don't get out to clear as early as the sweeper is going by. So just to have that one clear or one or two clear paths to the west side of town would be ideal.
Yes, good point.
Councillor
Thank you.
Demoda.
Yeah, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer, and I appreciate this and just the opportunity here. I didn't want to make a big deal of it. I was gonna to talk about it on the side, and just because we have the map in front of us, I just thought to bring it to attention, because I'm not sure if the people operating the sweepers are completely knowledgeable on the map. I did have one of the residents that lives, I don't know the number, but if you look at the map on the corner of Patricia and Willow Avenue, and it's directly across the Snakes Hill there, there's one little yellow unit there that's the remaining unit on that block on that end. That just kind of brought up to me on the side that asked me why the sweeper stops at their property and doesn't continue around, and done a little bit odd. Because they stopped at the red and then turned around and went back in the other direction. So I thought before I saw this, because this was on Thursday, I think that that we were doing that. So I thought I'd bring that up and just relay that. Thank you.
Make note of that. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Just to continue on those items that's addressed by Councillor Wilson and Councillor Demoda. I wonder too whether staff might go by and just confirm that although there are some houses still standing, I would think that there are some that are standing but unoccupied. And so I noticed on the 700 block of Patricia, for example, I know of one house where the back has been burnt out and nobody can live in that house, and yet it shows as purple. And there might be some other examples where this is, I acknowledge perhaps a bit rough, but it might be worth looking at ensuring that we are helping people who cannot occupy their homes for maybe for months yet, even though they are still standing. The other question I had is just with respect to the level of service for the sidewalks in the parking lanes. So in Cabin Creek West, there are two routes, one adjacent to trees on the south, and the one on the north is adjacent to lost and destroyed properties. Are the parking lanes swept to the same standard as a sidewalk would otherwise be swept?
Yes, that's the intent, is that they would see the same level of service as would be treated on the sidewalks.
Thank you.
CAO given.
Deputy Mayor Keller, Deputy Mayor, I'm still behind the times. Deputy Mayor Waxer, I just wanted to follow up on the mayor's other point about the 700 block of Patricia. I think we just have an inconsistency between our maps. If you look on figure 1, you'll see that there's actually a green stretch in front of the damaged and impacted properties. There's 2 at the end of the block there. So I think we just have an inconsistency between that sort of our illustrations on the 2 maps. I'm imagining that there's 2 properties towards the end of the block, one that's red and one that's yellow. And it shows that those are areas where we actually do the clearing. But I can see that it doesn't sort of represent that way on figure 2.
That's right.
But yes, I was looking at the multicolored one, which doesn't show there. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Councillor Demoda.
Well, I just realized we're just kind of, there's some nitpickiness to this, and I think it's good, like it's healthy for the community to be cognizant of this, but I also want to relay my gratitude to the work that the people are doing on the ground in the community and in particular the sweepers that are out there. And you know, sometimes it's been kind of crazy weather and they're still just storming along, pardon the pun. And I appreciate the work that's going on, and you know, it's just that camaraderie in the community and helping each other out, and I really appreciate seeing that.
I just may take the moment to ask if there is any signage regarding people walking in the parking lane in the Cabin Creek area, because as I recall, there's often people running quite quickly through that area, and I worry about children walking on the road.
Maybe I can handle that one, Dr. Mans, since that's my neighborhood. So there is actually signage along the way. It's actually very visible, and we have markers sort of all along the path to delineate it. And so I think it's quite well, I mean, it's the best clean part of the street. It's actually down the bare pavement, so it's actually very obvious that it's intended for walking, and that it's clearly signed as no parking and repeatedly signed as no parking. So I think I'm very comfortable with it, and we could certainly share pictures for everybody that hasn't been on to be able to see it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Melnick.
And just to complement that conversation, I have noticed the addition of temporary crosswalk signs where people would be crossing over from one side to the other. So, you know, proactively it advises drivers approaching that there's a crosswalk where there wasn't one before, and to anticipate people crossing over.
Going back to the request for decision, I wonder if there are no further questions, if someone is willing to make a motion. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roxer. I do make the motion that committee receive the report for information. And thank you for the amount of work put into the report to ensure the safety of our residents through the winter.
All in favor? All in favor? Motion carried. We move on then to 7.3, development of recovery strategic priorities.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. So administration is here with a recommendation that committee recommend council approve the addition of a new focus area of wildfire recovery to the 2022-2026 strategic priorities, and the committee direct administration develop draft wildfire recovery strategic priorities and return for a future committee of the whole meeting. So as council knows, at the start of this term, you established the strategic priorities, which the organization uses to guide our decision making, and the tasks that we undertake. Last fall, council reviewed those strategic priorities at its organizational meeting and reaffirmed that the priorities that council had established continue to be relevant through recovery. Administration would certainly agree with that perspective. Items like proactively working to prevent people from becoming vulnerable and act when they are vulnerable, highly relevant through recovery. Ensuring that other orders of government are aware of Jasper's unique circumstance, again, highly relevant through recovery. So administration agrees that our existing priorities are flexible enough and reflective of what we need to do, that they don't need to be changed. It's becoming clear, though, that as the community moves into what will be a multi-year recovery, that there needs perhaps to be some more specific objectives set about what the community feels the direction should be for recovery. There are a number of different efforts underway, but the strategic priorities are council's way of establishing on behalf of Jasperites what the priorities are for our community. And obviously, the priorities around recovery are some of the most important ones that we're facing right now. Administration believes that these priorities shouldn't be a simple list of tasks. Obviously, there are many, many tasks underway, coordinated through a number of different bodies. We should continue the approach the council set in developing high-order strategic aims. We believe that we could identify appropriate strategic aims using a number of documents that this council has seen this term that have also been the subject of public engagement through a variety of different methods. In the report, we've listed a number of those different documents that may be relevant that administration could use to sort of identify themes that across the different documents that might identify, the work that we were hoping to undertake before the fire, as well as, what priorities might follow that work if we were to bring them all together. We've also could draw upon recently developed documents from other orders of government. Obviously, the Jasper National Park Management Plan has something to say about the community of Jasper. We could look at that as a reference. And the provincial government's higher ground tourism sector strategy is a forward-looking document about where the tourism sector should go. And obviously, that would be important around our local economic context. So administration is recommending that council approve the development of a new category. So it would be an additional strategic priority theme area. And they direct administration to do the work of drafting some strategic priorities for your consideration. Alternately, council could choose to engage in a strategic planning exercise. We typically would do that about this time of year, review our strategic priorities, make adjustments, have discussions about strategic topics. The challenge with that approach would be that the pace of recovery and recovery planning, it sort of doesn't pause. And that's why administration is recommending, utilizing pre-existing documents where there are already objectives set, identifying themes in those documents, and then we can summarize those and bring them back to you in a format that would be consistent with your strategic priorities, and then council can review that recommendation. So essentially giving you a base to start from, rather than what is, as council knows, the hard work of starting from scratch, trying to identify priorities. We think that we can aid you in getting there faster, which is really important because, as council is aware, there is work on a overall recovery plan for Jasper. One of the challenges that administration sees is that our recovery work is, by nature of our community, tripartite. Three different orders of government, all trying to express their view of what is the best for the future of Jasper. And that's a necessity of our community. It has to be looked at. At the same time, there needs to be an opportunity for the will of the community to be expressed, even if it is a input that would influence that ultimate plan. That has to be able to be supported by everybody else. Council has the autonomy and authority to be able to establish its own strategic priorities, as we have, as council do across the province. So developing a theme area in your strategic priorities is the way that you could likely, express a more clear view of the community's wishes and hopes that would influence the ultimate outcome of those documents that, by the nature of our community, have to be sort of three-party documents. So for all those reasons, the administration is recommending that committee recommend council approve the addition of the focus area. That's something that could go forward now, and then and direct administration to return to a future committee meeting with some draft priorities for council's consideration. As I mentioned, there are alternatives. Council could choose to stand pat with the strategic priorities as they are today, recognize that they are very flexible and could address a number of different areas that are, as I said, Theo said, related to recovery, very, very relevant to good recovery. Or council could choose to direct administration to establish some kind of working session for council to start from scratch on establishing priorities for that focus area. Again, for expediency, I recognize that there's a good body of work that really is an administrative task to identify themes in the existing body of work. We can do that for you, and then council can start from that base, and that might be the most effective use of the council's time. So that's the reason that we're recommending the approach that we are here, and that there are alternative strategies. So happy to answer any discussion, any question or any discussion, Councillor Bushnell.
Councillors, any questions? Oh, Councillor Demona.
Just so that I'm not always seen as the person that likes to be last. A lot has changed since September when we got to meet with our consultant and we talked about you know, what our recoveries were gonna look like. And now that we have the JRCC and the interaction that we've had recently with the other levels of government, a lot of things have changed and progressed, and they'll continue to do so. And I think this is an important addition to our strategic priorities, and particularly launching the next council into some progression and having wheels on the ground as far as rolling forward with this, because it's going to be constantly changing. It's fluid, and we're going to have our ups and downs. And I think this is a really good process to be, you know, working with and, you know, having for us and for the next council to come, so that we're setting them up for success as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I am entirely supportive of the initiative, and it would be worthwhile to include in the strategic priorities something related to wildfire recovery. It's honest anyway. We might as well be seen to be doing our work strategically. And I support the suggestion of the methodology, that is, work from what we already have. Don't expend particularly a bunch of administrative time with blue sky sessions, because we don't have time for that in these circumstances, but we should focus on it. My only comment is with respect to the guiding documents. And I appreciate that the draft says including, so it's not restricted to those. But there are a few documents that I think would be relevant to include in that list. One being our vision statement, which is still relevant for the people of Jasper, I think. Potentially the community sustainability plan. And it seems to me that we have a COVID recovery strategy. And this is not dissimilar, and in fact, wildfire recovery can, I think, be intertwined with ongoing COVID recovery, and many of the strategies will overlap. So I would just encourage reference to those documents as well.
Councillor Wilson.
No questions or comments, I would be willing to make the motion.
Okay, if everyone's ready, that sounds great.
Yeah, so I would make a motion that the committee recommend council approve the addition of the new focus area wildfire recovery to the 2022 to 2026 strategic priorities, and that committee direct administration develop draft wildfire recovery strategic priorities, leveraging existing guidance documents and previous public engagement processes, and return future community to whole meeting.
Any debate? Not, I'll call the question. All in favor? I think at this point, it's a good time to take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 11 p.m. AM, sorry.
She's like, you're good, I can get a nap in. I'll be.
Well, I was intending. Welcome back. We will move now then to 7.4, property tax penalty receivable write-off request. Looks like Director Malchuk will speak to it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Yes, City Council's presenting a write-off request. This one's for property tax penalties only. The instance that occurred here was that there was a cafe in Parks Canada main building. And they were unable to pay the taxes for 2022 and 23. The cafe basically did not renew their lease for the space. They relinquished their lease in early of 2023, and unfortunately, we were not informed, the municipality wasn't informed. We found out after doing some research and digging around in early 2024. So after that, administration reached out to receive the funding from Parks Canada. And they did pay for the tax levies for 2022 and 2023, but only a small percentage of the penalties that were imposed. Excuse me, so the penalty amount was originally $3,493.08. They only paid $626.68 of that. So the remaining amount, as you can see, there's a chart that demonstrates the tax levy that was put out, penalties that were imposed, how much was paid, and how much is remaining. And administration has deemed that this is an uncollectible amount, and for purposes of the annual audit, which is coming up here in March, administration must recommend that council authorize the write-off of these uncollectible amounts. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Malchuk, and I'm wondering if there are questions from the councillors. Councillor Wilson. Mayor Hutton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I'm certainly supportive of the recommendation to write it off. I've got two questions. The first, though, how does a tenant get a property tax bill? Typically, tenants in a commercial building would have leases with a landlord, and they might be obligated to pay a proportional share of the taxes for the building, but it's the property owner that gets the tax bill. So I'm confused about how a tenant in this particular building could be on our tax roll at all. I understand that the Parks Canada building would be assessed and then would not be subject to taxation anyway. They would pay the payments in lieu of taxes, which they in fact are good at doing. But the tenant itself, the cafe, should not be on our tax roll. So how does this get to the point where it comes to us to reduce or eliminate or write off taxes for somebody that I can't see is actually a taxpayer?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor, through to Mayor Ireland. With this property, it's a bit different given that it's Parks Canada building and they are subleasing the spaces for their tenants. It is different in this case, and you are correct, it is not the same for any other situation. But it must be part of some kind of agreement that Parks Canada holds with leases of their buildings. I am not entirely sure if that's the case that they hold, but it is something that is an oddity for sure. But all of the rentals, leases that occur within a building are the same. They're all taxed individually, not Parks Canada.
Well, thank you. Simply deepens the mystery. I don't know how, as a landlord, they can get away with that. Other landlords couldn't voice a share of taxes on. I mean, they can through their lease agreement, but not with us. We charge property taxes to the owner. Anyway, it's curious, but I let it go for now. The second question I had, does a write-off in any amount have to come to council, or do we have a policy that we could adjust that would allow you in circumstances such as this, where we're dealing with a relatively small amount of money over a number of years, just to do what is administratively logical and necessary without the need to bring this directly to council?
And thank you, Your Worship, for the question. Deputy Mayor, it's over to you. Yes, it was an old policy that stated it was anything over $1,000. However, we will be, as part and parcel of the policy rewrites and which administration is working on. And obviously they've taken the back burner again once, since we've had the new occurrence in our lives. But yes, it is part of the plan to present to council what an amount that council will be comfortable with administration writing off on their own without council approval, because that amount is very small, and we recognize that, and it was written a long time ago, so it will be coming as soon as we can get it back to council.
Councillor Keller, her MP, and then Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wexler. I'm just curious, I'm going to follow up on Mayor Aaron's question. So if I understand it, then the VRA are working on here and all of the kiosks within the train station pays direct taxes to the municipality?
Yes, Deputy Mayor through to Councillor Clark, yes, that's correct. Every single one that is within that building pays taxes to the municipality.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, that comes as a bit of a conundrum to me too, and I'm just wondering when we, if that was an agreement that was worked out when we got autonomy, and because of the grants in place of taxes, maybe there was a decision made at the time that the government, the federal government, because they give us grants, we'll put those particular places. It was just an odd observance, but I think this is something that could be worked out with our transition coming over land use and planning through Beth's department there, that we can reconstruct or make a little bit easier, or if it needs to be in place, it'd be worth it. I think we're doing so much work in so many other areas, and this is just one of those things that I hate to bog somebody down to researching, but there's a reason why it's there. To me, I find it kind of odd, like the others, and it'd be worth exploring just to find out, to know why it's there. Thank you.
CAO.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Turn on my camera and then moved away from it. Council, I'll say that, the sort of the potential of there likely is a relationship between the Government of Canada as the owner of the building and their lessees. And so the relationship and how they describe that is, what that looks like. The municipality probably has no involvement in that. I would say that the system has worked generally and continues to be in place for all the other lessees. And so would kind of say that other than this one relatively odd instance, that we haven't seen a pattern of this at all, I would kind of suggest that this probably falls in that it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think there's one situation here, again, that is abnormal. If Director Malachuk started to see this type of situation occur regularly, then I think we would start to suggest that, well, there is something that needs to be fixed here. I would say that this is a system that has been working other than in this one instance.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but I'll know when I see it.
Are there any other questions? Is our councillor willing to make a motion? Councillor Melton.
Thank
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I would make the motion that committee recommend council approve the write-off of property tax receivable penalty for roll 006841, the cafe within Parks Canada Admin Building, for penalties incurred in 2022, 2023, and 2024 in the amount of $2,866.40.
Any debate? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Then we move on then to 7.5, property tax receivable write-off request provincial.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, so this is another that council has seen on a regular basis. Administration is coming to council or committee to request a committee recommend council approve the write-off of property tax receivable for roll 500,000. My eyes might not be working properly, which is a provincial building, for half of the amount, levied for 2024. A bit of history is, that in 2019, the provincial government, notified us that they would only be paying 50% of the levy taxation amount. So they, informed us not to adjust the levy itself, but that they would only be paying 50% of the amount levied. For history's sake and information's sake, should council direct administration to write off the 2024 amount, the amount written off in 6 years will come to a total of $157,320.58. So this amount, they have paid the other 50% already. As you can see that amount is attached to the request for decision. Again, administration has deemed this property tax receivable as uncollectible, because municipalities are created under provincial legislation and have no mechanism to collect unpaid amounts from the government of Alberta. Again, for the purpose of the annual audit, administration must recommend that council authorize write-off of these uncollectible amounts. And I am available for any questions should there be any. Thank you.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. On the 19th of December, I listened to the Ryan Jasper podcast, and Premier Smith was on the podcast. She followed Mayor Sohi out of Edmonton, and she spoke to exactly this. She acknowledged that the federal government pays the full 100% of the payment of lieu taxes, and she committed to bring this forward to the February provincial budget. She spoke to Minister McIver around it as well. In the city of Edmonton, it equates to a shortfall of about $20 million, which is quite a bit more than ours, but $35,000, that would be a part-time outreach worker for a year, which I'm sure they need. That would be more funding for our youth programming. Our youth have experienced big trauma. That would also, I wonder how many community dinners that might fund as well. So while this is something that we have to do, I do really look forward to the outcomes of the provincial budget process in February.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, and I appreciate we're asking questions of administration. Back to that point raised by Councillor Hall, my question to administration is, do we have to do this? So we have done it in previous years. It is ostensibly uncollectible. But if the province is at last looking at going back to the way things were and paying their full share of servicing provincial buildings, if we write it off, might we lose an opportunity to collect it downstream? If we do nothing and just keep it on the books, would we have any increased opportunity of collecting if the government doesn't back change course?
Mayor Alberta, Mayor Ireland, that is a hard question to answer. There would be no harm in keeping it set as a receivable for another given amount of time. It would just stay on the books as receivable, and we would have to determine what would occur later in time. But I can't say that whether or not that would be something we might be able to recover at a different period of time.
I appreciate that. It's a fair answer. Nobody knows, but I might be inclined to give it a shot. To carry it as a receivable doesn't require, take it very much extra work on your part. I'm wondering whether you can answer some other questions I have. I'm not sure that I've seen the actual tax notice in previous cases with this, but it's included today. There is 0 for education property tax on that tax bill. But can you tell me whether the assessed value, so it's assessed at about 8 million, but there's about 3 million of exempt assessment there. But does the assessment get included in our total levy for education tax that we have to collect and then remit to the province? In other words, is every other taxpayer also contributing to the share of education tax that will be attributed to the assessed value of provincial lands? And similarly, does the same apply to the requisition from evergreens? So in other words, apart from saying this year, $35,000 of short paying the tax bill, are our other taxpayers also picking up a proportional increase for education property tax and evergreens requisition? And I appreciate you may not have that answer today, and this will only be a recommendation in any event. So if it's not too much work, I wonder whether that information could be made available to council at a later date.
Deputy Mayor, to Your Worship, yes, I don't have the answer to that right now. I'd have to look at other roles and analyze that to see. I've never really thought about it. They are usually on the report, but I could bring up others to look to see if it's the similar case. I just don't have that answer at the top of my head, sorry.
Thank you for that. And again, I don't want to burden you with extra work, and it is up to council in any event to give a direction, but I'm wondering whether it would be possible to provide to council a comparative amount for the federal government. So we similarly have no mechanism to enforce collection from the federal government for the grants that they pay in lieu of taxes, and yet we rely on their goodwill to keep doing that. Admittedly, they have many more properties. But if the federal government were to take the same action as the provincial government and pay only half of the levy on their assessment, what impact would that have on our revenue? Again, that's only my question so far, to see whether council is interested in having that, and I don't know how much work would be entailed on your behalf to do that. I know you've got lots on your plate already.
Sorry, were you looking for an answer to that?
Just on the workload, is
Oh.
that something that?
Anything is possible. I can't, sorry, to you, Deputy Mayor. Anything's possible. It's just, I can't determine right now what the workload behind that would be. Yeah, I can't say at the moment, but it's definitely something that's doable. It might just take a little bit longer given that we're always analyzing other things at the moment, given our situation, but, it's definitely possible.
Councillor Demoda.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I like where the mayor is going on this, fiscal prudence, and I appreciate the insight, right? Because I mean, it's just, we're facing an overall load here with a potential 10%. That might be coming down on the community as a whole, and I did have other comments, and you know, unfortunately, I seem to attract a little bit more. I don't know, for some reason, when I make comments, it's more insulting to provincial leaders than when other people make it, so I'm just gonna refrain from my thoughts there. But I appreciate the overall kind of umbrella look at this, because I think anywhere we can save our local stakeholders, our taxpayers, anywhere we can see those savings, that we should pursue them. Thank you.
I may take this moment to ask a question of administration. I believe we understood after the fire that the Pine Grove Manor was a building owned by the province, not by Evergreens, and I wondered whether the 50% also applies to that building.
Deputy Mayor Waxer, this is the only one that we have seen this case of. Or I would be bringing that to council to make that decision every year as well. So this is the only building that they have deemed as only collecting, that we can only collect 50%. I think, CEO Gibbon has something else to say to that.
I'll make an informed guess, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I would bet that the Pine Grove is likely owned by the Alberta Social Housing Corporation, and so as a corporate entity, it probably is responsible for paying property tax, whereas the provincial buildings owned outright by the provincial government rather than sort of a sub-entity, and so that's likely the difference.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just looking at the table for consent, I might be in favor of keeping this on as a receivable until after provincial budget processes happen. I will send out the link to the show this December 19th, and she spoke to this, Mayor Sophie was on before. It's a much bigger deficit in the city because they have all the provincial buildings and it equates to a lot more money. But again, 35,000 is 35,000, and that could be used here in Jasper. And with maybe a piece of the motion to look into, I'm not even sure what we do, but it was a commitment she made on a public podcast. So I might be in favor of the alternate at this point. As long as it doesn't make it worse or any more work or. Yeah.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I think over the course of the 3 or 4 years here, we've had this process, and we've written a letter, I believe twice, to the province, asking them to reconsider their stance on grants in lieu of taxes. And then last March in the Alberta Muni's Leadership Summit, this was a very hot topic that came up, and Mayor Sochi from Edmonton did bring that up on the floor. If we are going to keep it on the books, should we write a letter to the provincial government indicating to them that this receivable we're going to keep it on the books, or would we just continue to maintain it on our records until it comes a point where we'll have to deal with it potentially for year-end audit? And I see that might be a challenge as we have a year-end audit coming up, and this might need to be resolved before the provincial government comes out, the provincial budget comes out.
Okay, believe there was a number of questions embedded in that, and I'll look to administration to answer those.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I might need help with that as well. The only thing that I can suggest is that our audit doesn't occur until March, so if we know more, we can have the discussion in February, early March, potentially, about this again. Should council wish to readdress it later and not necessarily now, because we do have the time to book things to our 2024 calendar year until the audit occurs, until our financial statements are finalized for May 1st, basically. So even, you know, even some time in April, I can still do adjustments to the 2024 year. So it might be something that council would want to just maybe talk about again at a later date, which is also possible.
Maybe I'll just add an additional sort of in respect of, I think certainly the alternatives and the recommendation are legitimate. Council could choose to, sort of table this discussion until a later date. Director Malinchuk's identified that certainly something that's possible. A couple of observations that I would make is that this is a long-standing sort of issue across the provinces, even Jasper. The Premier has made public commitments, not just in the media, but also the most recent Alberta Municipalities Conference, where she, in front of that forum, specifically identified that she would take that back and do some work on it. So it's possible that this will come to resolution before we close our books. I think I would suggest that it's very unlikely that the provincial government will go back in time. I would suggest that any change that they might make would be forward-looking and saying, from this point forward, we will do X. And so I don't know that there'd be a significant value in sort of holding back a decision on this. That said, it's also, doing nothing doesn't take a lot of effort. It's just another thing on the undone list that at some point we will need to do. Unless the government comes back and says, well, for the last year or the last 5 years or whatever, we will pay you. Again, I would rate that in the unlikely column. The other thing that I would say is, in terms of the interactions that we need to have with other orders of government, and the range of different issues that we're interacting on, this one's pretty small potatoes. And again, it isn't unique to Jasper. So where we might want to expand our political capital, council can judge whether this is a useful tool in the context of everything else that we're doing, or whether, our $30,000 for this year in comparison to Edmonton's $20 million, is our advocacy likely to make a difference there in this larger provincial issue, or perhaps we should, keep in reserve council's advocacy capacity for issues that are more directly impacting Jasper and more likely for us to get the influence. And again, in this case, there is no harm in, saying, we'll come back to this at some point in the future. Again, I think in terms of administrative effort, it's no effort to do nothing. It is just one thing that's on the undone list, which, is not there and will eventually need to be done before they close the next year.
Councillor Demona.
Yeah, I'm very weary about taking an alternate stance right now, just because of the temperature of what we've been seeing, and I don't want to inadvertently offend our higher governing bodies, just because of, it just seems like that's the direction it happens no matter what we do, and I think that we just stay with the status quo and go forward and work towards achieving our higher goals, and particularly in housing, and try to work as amicably as possible in that area. I think I'm afraid if we take any alternate stances, it'll be received as some type of rebellious act, and I don't think that's healthy right now.
So just for clarity's sake, this is the writing off of the the tax roll for 2024, not 2025, so that it likely makes sense to go forward. Is there, sorry, Councillor Mills?
Well, there's no harm moving it forward one more step to council, and at, next council meeting, we can vote against it or not vote for it, whatever, defer it. So I would make the motion that committee recommend council approve the write-off of property tax receivable for roll 500,000, provincial building for half of the amount levied, in the amount of 35,136.62.
Any debate? Mayor Ryan?
I appreciate, that it just moves it a step forward and it will come back to council. But my inclination, is to vote against the recommendation that we approve the write-off. I favor that we keep it on the books for the time being, and it's not about the amount. I have always taken the position since the government announced this in 2019 that this is it is reflective of a dismissive attitude toward municipal government generally. And it sends a message that our taxpayers here, that they don't have the option of paying half of their taxes. Nobody has that option except one government chooses to do that. And it is demeaning and very suggestive of perceived inadequacy at the municipal government level. And so without writing any additional letter, as we have done in the past, I agree with Councillor DeMola that our message is already out there, and undoubtedly our proceedings are being watched. And either we acquiesce to the prevailing status, which might in fact encourage the provincial government to not address this long-standing issue. If we take a bit of a stand and say, look, we're not prepared to write it off right now, we're not prepared to acquiesce, even though CAO Given is probably right that any change would be forward-looking, not retroactive. Still, I think it's worth standing up for municipal government and saying, once again, this is wrong. This is a wrong way to treat a relationship among entities that have to be partners. Again, I don't want to send a letter because already we have enough extraneous matters influencing our progress toward recovery. But we have to get on a more even keel. Everybody has to focus on the primary issue, which is the recovery of our community, both socially and economically. And this does not help. And I am prepared to make that statement without doing more, but just don't write it off yet. We'll see what comes, because that in itself is a statement that this is not a helpful approach to our relationship. So I respect Councillor Wilson's intent that this will come back in a week, but in a week I don't think we'll have heard anything, and I would rather not move it forward and then vote against it at that point than vote in favor of that recommendation at this stage. So at the end of all of that long rant, I am more inclined to direct administration to keep the amount as a receivable, at least for the time being, rather than to suggest that we write it off at this stage.
Councillor Wilson?
Just quickly take the opportunity to close. I would say maybe the intent is just a little bit of give and take. We recognize that you're requiring us to write this off, and maybe when we ask for 10% DRP to be written off, they would entertain that.
So you close, that's fine.
Any other debate? Really needed, oh, sorry, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, debate, just for clarity, the motion is it as it is indicated on our recommendations? Okay.
I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? That's, motion is not carried. Right. Yeah.
I would make a motion and, oh, sorry. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Baxter. I would make a motion and the committee recommended council direct administration to keep the amount set as a property tax receivable in the amount of $35,136.62 and return the matter to committee of the whole in early March.
Any debate? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. We'll move on then to 7.6, 2024 property tax penalty post.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wexler. So today this comes forward as administration has noticed that due to the wildfire, and it occurs regardless, but due to the wildfire this year, there are more property owners who are charged with paying their property taxes. And given this unique situation, administration believes that it's a good time to incentivize people to enroll for the pre-authorized payment plan. And that, you know, given this year's challenging for most, administration also would like to maybe suggest a small change in what is normally done with the bylaw. So the bylaw states, bylaw number 40 for Jasper municipal tax penalties, states that on January 1st, should any unpaid taxes be deemed in arrears, that they will have a penalty of 18% applied to the amount outstanding. So administration was thinking that, and this also comes with what occurred in the wildfire, but also then there was a postal strike and getting up notice to people that it was supposed to be happening January 1st. So there was discussions around that as well, and how we were going to communicate to those in arrears. But we felt like it might be a good time to potentially reduce the amount to 15% from 18%, change the posting date to March 1st. And this would be only guaranteed or given to those that would sign up for the pre-authorized payment plan by February 15th. And those who enrolled would not receive penalty for their arrears should all of their arrears and their 2025 taxes be paid by the end of 2025. The pre-authorized payment plan is an excellent opportunity for those that are struggling. We want more people to know about it and to enroll for it, because it is a way to ensure that the client does not receive penalties should their payments go through on the timely basis, so that once they receive NSFs or we get an NSF from the bank, then that removes them from the pre-authorized payment plan. But it's a good thing for those residents to ensure that they're not receiving the penalties that could be incurred by not paying their taxes. So the recommendation coming to council today is that committee recommend council direct administration to adjust the property tax penalty to 15% from 18% for 1 year only. And that committee recommend council direct administration to adjust the property tax penalty posting date to March 1st from January 1st for 1 year only. The implications of this would basically be, financially, could be anywhere from $25,820 to around $155,000, depending on how the property owner takes up on this opportunity. So it would ultimately depend on what they would decide to do. But that would be the impact to the municipal collections of penalties that would be applied. And I'm available for any questions about that request. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Roxer. My question to you, Director Melchuk, the penalties collected on property taxes in arrears, are those budgeted for? Like, what does that, where does that money go?
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Hall, somewhat, yes, we do have a penalties GL account that we do budget, and it does ultimately follow trending that we've seen. So there is a budget set to not remove that, you know, we know that there will be penalties that are incurred, and we do set a budget for that.
If I may, so when we go through budget process in the fall, we see the tax requisition required. Are there any penalties in that number, or is that just straight property taxes?
May I ask a clarification? The penalties itself, maybe I can explain, but the penalties itself is its own revenue that would be separated and offset any kind of tax that we would levy to clients. So in following the trends, we budget a certain amount that would offset the amount that we actually levy. Is that clear?
Sort of. I think where I'm trying to go with this is I'm just wondering if for 1 year only, we can just not charge penalties. I feel like I go back to when we were in this forum room when Minister Bossino announced the funding for small business, and Mayor Ireland related our situation to any other town in the province losing their farmers losing their field, losing their harvest. And we lost our harvest, we will not recover until next fall. Like I just, even as a, non-commercial property owner, non-business owner, and I'm paying taxes again, which is fine. If we did that, what implications would that have on the budget? These numbers are big, and I worry about people that are behind on their taxes, and then they can't even catch up because they didn't have any, they couldn't put money in the bank from August until, and again, it's gonna be until next fall that we really see people starting to sort of bounce back. If we reduce that penalty just for this year from March 1st until now to 0, what implications will that have on our budget?
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Hall, the maximum that we would see would be that $54,918. That would be, sorry, one second. Yes, $154,918 is the full 18% that would be charged in January. Or if it was the 18% charged on January 1st, as we normally would, but as per the bylaw.
Okay, thank you for that. And I looked at this over the weekend, and I just would like to maybe know what other council colleagues feel about that. This is a unprecedented year. People are struggling hard. It might be a very, maybe we get more people to sign up for the monthly payments if the penalties were taken away. I'm not really sure what the implications on that are, but it's something I've been thinking about.
Councillor Kilher,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roxer. Just follow up on Councillor Hall's question. So if I'm understanding this right, $154,000 revenue in our budget is based on penalties. And so when we do the budget, then is 1% of our revenue expected penalties that we're going to receive because people haven't paid their taxes?
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Keller, the penalties GL account that we collect is not only on taxation, it would be any kind of penalties that would be incurred. So it could be on utilities as well. So it does offset the amount that we collect.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I wonder whether in terms of the discussion element in the request for decision, you have contemplated at all what might happen if we maintain the status quo. So I get it that it's been apparent since the wildfire that property owners are challenged to pay their property taxes, and I think it's fair to assume that that will continue to be the case until we see some economic recovery. What is, I think, missing here is a forecast of what might happen if penalties stay at the levels that they're at now. Is that in itself likely to force business failure? And if businesses fail, what is the ultimate cost to us in terms of revenue? And so to me, this looks more like a harm reduction strategy than necessarily relief to taxpayers, because the downside if we do nothing is that businesses may fail and then our revenues go down even more significantly. And on that basis, I wonder whether there has been consideration as to whether whatever the drop in revenue might be, it could be considered as something to apply for funding under the DRP. Because this is a direct attempt to allow, I think, property owners to reestablish themselves so we can recover our entire community. And although there might be some cost, that is offset against the gains that we will make if we are able to find some way to help businesses stay in business in particular. And I'm assuming that a lot of this will be non-residential properties, and perhaps that's an assumption that I shouldn't make. But to the extent that this is driven by a desire to ensure the survival of our tax base, then it is potentially a very reasonable expenditure, offset against even greater losses if we do nothing.
I think that's a valid point. Definitely, there are, just for consideration, there are commercial as well as residential within those amounts, so it's not all commercial. I didn't do the split of which is which. When it came down to lost revenue, also a good point. It would not necessarily be something that would be DRP recoverable, though it would be something that would be more on the side of revenue loss or stabilization that we would be required or requesting assistance with in stabilization of our finances going forward.
Good distinction, thank you for that, I appreciate that. If I may add one other question related to Councillor Hall's question about potentially zero penalties. Are you able to do any sort of forecast about our municipal cash flow potential situation if there was no penalty, and therefore basically a disincentive for anybody to pay their taxes, that they could use that money for other purposes, there's no penalty not paying their taxes. If people choose to not pay their taxes as a priority, then are we liable as an organization to run into cash flow challenges?
Deputy Mayor, through to your worship, yes, it is always going to be something that we have to think about with the cash flow situation. It's not going to be easy going forward. For the municipality, there's a lot to consider in what we will be faced with. So as a municipality, I believe, you know, it's something that should be thought about, as should the context of the situation of every person of the community. So, but that being said, also this year, it is more so an issue, and we are seeing that it is a bigger issue, but it's not to say that it's not an issue in every year. There's always that instance where there are people in arrears. So it's just increased slightly from one year to the next, and so we are seeing that change.
Thank you.
Councillor Jamoli.
Yeah, kind of all of the above. You know, I understand where Councillor Hall is coming from, and I appreciate again Mayor's insight. The predicament that some businesses are in the community are they still haven't fully recovered from COVID, from all those restrictions in place, depending on, you know, whether you're in accommodation or you're in food provisions and other different types of services. We've barely had a full season of high season to get through. And for some people in the community, whether, you know, you're residential and you're had approved accommodations, or you know, you're a business in another sector, the gravy month being that of August, where a lot of people go into the black, and September, those months floating through to the next spring. And, you know, I know that, you know, we're talking about overall taxes and penalties and that, because there's the residential aspect to it too. You know, I think we still need some mechanism to incentivize people to pay their taxes on time because of that cash flow thing, but you know, if you don't have something in place, then people say, well, I don't have to pay my taxes because there's no penalties, and then, you know, that ends up, you know, mounting and sometimes insurmountable for some, and I don't know what the right formula or recipe is to help our community out, but I think the less burden that, you know, we can put on our stakeholders, if that's even the proper term to use anymore, we should try to do the most prudent thing, and still at the same time have some good cash flow to keep things rolling forward.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. My question is, are most of the outstanding taxes and penalties a year-over-year thing, or are you seeing new tax accounts that are in arrears from this year only?
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Hall, yes, so that is why it's coming forward. There are roll numbers that we see year over year, but there are more additional new accounts this year that have emerged. Then, yeah, so it's coming to council as about this question about whether or not it can be used as a time for people to enroll in this payment plan and set themselves up for success rather than having to pay these penalties. There's a lot of people that don't do it, and it is a good time to set yourself up for success with this plan, then you wouldn't have to deal with these penalties. So, it could be a win-win for the municipality and for the client if, you know, they do set themselves up, they're not paying as much going forward, and municipality is still collecting the money that is outstanding and would assess the cash flow.
If I may, so if we were to adjust it to zero, we would then lose out on $155,000 in revenue. Is that, I'm understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Would there be an option or a world where if we were to reduce it to zero for those that have new in arrears with they have to sign up for the monthly program, would that be a program that might benefit our property owners?
I believe that's what we were trying to do, is that any of those people that signed up for it would receive the benefit of not receiving penalties. But if you didn't sign up, then you would still be incurring the penalties as per normal. But potentially with that month or 2 months change and percentage change just because of the given year that we've had. But it is the time, the intention was to incentivize that program and yeah. I think CEO Gibbon has more to add to that.
Yeah, and maybe we can just clarify, I think that the intent here is, so the intent is to give people more time to sign up rather than January 1st, since that's the second part of the motion. It's like, we'll give you until March 1st to get signed up and get your affairs in order, either, you know, sort of pay a balance owing, or to sign up for pre-authorized payment. If you sign up for pre-authorized payment by March 1st, then we would, by February 15th, then there wouldn't be a penalty applied. That is zero. If you don't sign up for pre-authorized payment and you continue to maintain a balance, you still are in arrears and you have an amount owing, administration's recommendation, this is the first part of the recommendation, will only charge you 15% this year rather than 18% previously. So sign up, that turns into a zero.
Okay, thank you. That wasn't clear. That is clear now. And you're talking about penalties from 2024.
That's correct.
Okay.
Exclusively 2024.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I should just continue on that today on this contract, Mr. Gibbons. So if somebody has penalties for 2022, 2023, they will continue at 18%, but the penalties in 2024 will be 15%, correct?
Trying to figure out the right words to explain this. So any penalties that were incurred prior to now would still remain. So, and again, Deputy Mayor, through to you. So any of the penalties that they would have received them already for 2022, 23, whatnot. The only suggestion is that they wouldn't receive, if they signed up for the pre-authorized payment, they wouldn't receive the 18% penalty charge as of January 1st, or if the council decided to do the March 1st 15% penalty, they would not receive that because they're signed up, and they would have to pay their arrears as well as their 2025 tax levy in the 2025 year. They would not receive, and those or 15%, whatever we're talking about, goes to the full amount of your arrears. So it wouldn't just be on the 2024 year, it goes towards all of the amount that you owe. So if you owed money from prior years, that percentage is tacked on to your levies plus whatever you are also penalized in prior years. Yeah.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you. Just for clarity, if you paid your taxes in full on the 15th of July, this wouldn't apply to you. And if you're already on the monthly payment plan and your property tax account is at zero, this wouldn't apply. So this, what we're talking about is for a small number of ratepayers right now who are in arrears, and it would be an opportunity to assist them. But we wouldn't be assisting the broad spectrum of taxpayers. We're just trying to get people more current and reduce the amount of potential loss, I guess, in the long term.
Deputy Mayor through to Councillor Malik, that's exactly it. It wouldn't be for everyone, so it's not a broad scope. It would be for those that we have seen that might be struggling a bit more.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I think I can support the motion if it was adjusted slightly to say something to the effect of adjust the property tax to zero if you sign up by February 1st for pre-authorized payment, or 15% if you don't. Not sure how that sits with this table. And I think that's what it is happening anyways. It just might be a good to have it a little more clear in the motion.
Deputy Mayor Waxer, my suggestion would be that maybe this is a third bullet. So we'd have the first bullet, committee recommend council direct administration to adjust property tax penalty to 15% from 18% for 1 year only. So that would apply to everybody, right? That ends up in this situation where they might be incurring penalties because they're in arrears. I think maybe what we need is a second bullet, that committee recommend council direct administration to waive tax penalties on the 2024 year for any taxpayer who signs up for the enrolls in the pre-authorized payment plan program by February 15th, 2025. It's the second one I can put in direct contract, just make sure that we get it right, the intent. Sorry, and we just wanted to, there's a couple of different approaches. And I think what I've described as a potential motion there, direct knowledge checks agrees that that's actionable. And so the intent would be, so broadly, first point, the first recommendation would be, apply to anybody in that situation. We're basically lowering the penalty that would apply to 2024 arrears. This new point would say that if you sign up for the pre-authorized payments plan by February 15th of this year, then your 2024 penalty would be zero. You still need to make due, you need to pay off your amount owing in 2024, and you will also have your 2025 taxes coming due, and those will also be a part of your pre-authorized payments. So your pre-authorized payments in 2025 will be a bit higher because you're paying off last year's as well, but you would receive zero penalty on the 2024 year, and that would be the inducement to encourage people to sign up on the pre-authorized payment. And then the final recommendation, that the second one that's already written in the report, is to extend that posting date to March 1st from January 1st, and that essentially gives people a bit more time to participate in these programs that council is recommending establishing.
Any other questions? Yes, sorry, Councillor, very big.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I'm trying to say that 3% is not going to make a huge difference. So if it's $3,000, you're saving $90 by going down by 3%. Like, if we want to give an incentive, maybe we go down to 9%. Like we want to really encourage people to do this. It has to be worth their while. And I could see around 9%, 3% on $3,000. I just worked out like it was $90 for the year. You know what I mean? And if I'm that tight for money, I'm probably going to risk not signing up. So I think 9%, but again, people have to pay their arrears. But if we're going to make a difference, I think let's make a difference worthwhile.
Councillor Wilson and Councillor.
I think you're confused maybe, or maybe I am, but I think the incentive is 18 down to 0.
No, we're talking about 18 down to 15.
Well, but 18 down to 15 would be if you didn't sign up. So you're gonna just, it's still a reduction. It's not it's almost an incentive not to pay. Because, but again, you're still gonna get charged 15%, which is pretty, but the incentive is to sign up, then you're no penalties.
Okay, I misunderstood it. But but my understanding is instead of paying 18 for overall, we're only going to be paying 15. So if I'm outstanding, right? And I'm currently paying 18%. The first bullet, the way I understand it, if I don't sign up, I'll be paying 15 for the year. I'll be paying 15 overall.
Yeah.
But if we want to give people a break to try, how about 9? Because we know there's some people who won't be able to sign up because they can't afford it, but to continue at 15 for them, like as Mayor Ireland said, you know, it's not helping in the recovery.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. So for clarification, if someone's in arrears, they choose to sign up by the 15th and create a pre-authorized payment program, that will include the 2024 taxes and their 2025, or do they have to pay those 2024 out in full and then move into the program moving forward for 2025 taxes?
It's a good question. So, access, so I'll check those right for that you'll be indicated. So time is that the recommended motion I suggested as a new motion. Wouldn't mind if that was okay, so you have to sign up, represent payment. If you do that on the date, then it's 0, penalty on 2024 year, and you can start making payments on the 2024 year, and we'll structure your pre-authorized payments to be able to sort of do that way. And the administration regularly works with taxpayers to look at the tax payment plans. That's a regular part of business that we've done for many years. So we come up with a pre-authorized payment amount that would help the property owner make progress on paying their 2024 years. And then when the 2025 tax is the deal. So it would start doing both. It didn't have to do a lump sum payment. Yeah.
And if I may, does the administration have are you able to, so say they can start paying February 15, a smaller amount, and as summer progresses, they can increase those payments, or does it have to be the same amount all year long?
Deputy Mayor, City Council Hall, the way pre-authorized payments works is that it would be a set amount. If you want to pay more, you can do an additional payment, but your pre-authorized payment would come out monthly. That gets adjusted, it would get adjusted in July for the 25 year. So then your payment amount would change. You get notification of what your new payment amount is. Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I have become muddled. Let me just try and understand the years to which these various components apply. So for the first recommendation, the adjustment of the property tax penalty to 15% from 18% for 1 year only. That 1 year only, as I understand, is for those who are currently in arrears for the 2024 tax year.
Correct.
Okay. So at some point when we're ready for motions, I would like to clarify that in the motion. It says 1 year only. And we're doing this in 2025. We're talking about those who are currently in arrears for 2024. So it would go from 18% to 15%, subject to the second bullet, I think, which is that we would adjust the sign-up date for PAP to February 15 of 2025. Does that apply to everyone, or for future, or does it matter? Or is that focused again on people who are currently in arrears for 2024? If they sign up by February 15, the penalty goes to zero for the arrears from 2024 tax year.
Deputy Mayor, through your worship, it would be, it would only be the 15%, or sorry, the 0% charged for 1 year only. So either they get normally they would see the 18% of January 1st. So if they do not sign up, they would potentially see the 15% instead of the 18%. If they sign up, they would see 0% for 1 year only. Next year in 2026, January 1st of 2026, it would go back to normal, 18%. We would follow through the same as the bylaw states it. The 1 year only is being stated so that it's just the one-time opportunity to receive this reduction in the penalty that you could be incurring.
Right, but the opportunity to go to zero by signing up by February 15 applies to those who are already facing penalties for arrears for 2024.
Yes, correct, for 2024 and for any other years before that as well. Yeah.
Right, but it's not applicable to penalties on arrears yet to come for 2025.
Correct.
That's where I started, but I needed to be clear, and I think that the motions would be clearer for the public if we stated the years in each. So I think now what I'm hearing from administration is that a three-part motion. One is the reduction from 18 to 15% for arrears for the 2024 tax year. The second one being that you sign up for PAP prior to February 15th of 2025. Penalty for arrears for 2024 reduced to zero as long as those arrears are paid by December 31st of 2025. And then the minor thing of changing the posting date to March 1st from January 1st.
If yours, the only advice I might offer is, that's sort of two-parter. You said, to zero, as long as the arrears are paid by December 31st, 2025, and the taxpayer enrolls in the pre-authorized payment plan. That's because that's the inducement, right? It's not just that we'll wait till the end of the year to see if you don't pay. It's that we need you to enroll this spring in pre-authorized payments, and we start doing a payment plan, and we'll do that with you. I think what you're adding is, and if at the end of the year, you do that payment plan, you enroll the payment plan, you've been making payments, and at the end of the year, you've caught up, then there's no penalty for the 2024.
Is there someone prepared? Sorry. Mary.
If I don't now muddle the rest of the council, I will take a stab at my motion. Would be that committee recommend council direct administration to adjust the property tax penalty to 15% from 18% for 1 year only, being the 2024 tax year. And
That's your worship. Stop there.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Do them one at a time.
Okay.
Make it easier.
Oh, okay. And stop.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? I wasn't sure.
No, I was there, yeah.
Okay, just a flash. Please proceed.
Yeah, I've got to start myself over my screws here. That committee recommend council administration in respect to taxpayers who are in arrears for the 2024 tax year and who enroll in TAP by February 15th, 2025 to impose no penalties on such arrears so long as arrears and 2024 taxes are fully paid by December 31st, 2025.
Sorry, I'm gonna read.
No debate, I liked it, but just near the end there, I had a little twinge of a headache in the back of my fingers. It was difficult to process, but I got it now.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimous.
Well done.
And that committee recommend council direct administration to adjust the property tax penalty posting date to March 1st from January 1st for 1 year only, being the posting of penalties for the 2024 tax year. So those penalties would be posted on March after people have an opportunity to sign up for PAP, and they would apply arrears and penalties for 2024, is my understanding.
If there's no debate, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. I think we've satisfied everything in this section. And so my question now is this the appropriate time to take a break? We have still 7.7 to go. Motion not to understand. In general, that's what he wants to know.
The second one, 15.
Okay, we adjourn. From the table to the break now, we're going to on the table at what it is.
Sounds clear.
Welcome back, everyone. We have We're moving now on to item 7.7, business recovery update.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Webster. I just wanted to bring this topic back up to council. The Jasper Business Recovery Program, we were fortunate that Community Futures West Yellowhead has partnered with Prairies Can, and we had the $3 million announcement of the monies available for Jasper businesses to apply for under the program. The non-repayable grants in amounts of $5,000 and $10,000. I did send councillors a copy of the details, and also it is on the Community Futures West Yellowhead website. But the reason I brought it up is this program has been so far quite popular, with well over $1 million applied for. But if you know of any businesses or businesses have not as yet taken a look at the program, I would encourage them to do that, because the program is available until the 28th of February only in the application process. So we have about another 6 weeks for Jasper businesses, eligible businesses, to apply for this recovery non-repayable grant. And I just submit this for information.
Thank you, and do I have a motion for someone to accept the information? Should skip the presentation book for information? All in favor? Thank you. We move then on to the motion action list.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. So we have a few updates that are noted in the motion action list as presented. I'll maybe just go through them quickly. The parcel CH Access Roads, Bruce Avenue Development Tender Award, so that's what it's called, but really now we're down to doing the local improvement levy for a portion of that, the parcel CH near the future RCMP location. Administration is working on that, just with other priorities and a couple of developments. We're going to ask to defer that one to March. B109, internal fiscal controls and financial reporting. We would recommend that this item from October 1st could be removed because it was delivered today and is going forward to council. The traffic bylaw safety considerations, this was really related to sidewalk snow clearing, and that item was delivered today, so it could also be removed. Moving forward onto the next page, the council remuneration review. There's updates to the pay structure for the next council following the municipal election. Council is well aware of that discussion. Administration is recommending that we will be able to bring that back in February. We had hoped to have it done prior to the end of the year, but obviously given events and the workload, that just wasn't possible. The 2025 budget item, we're also recommending to remove. These were some motions that were specific to the budget discussions and have since been addressed with the passage of the budget and its finalization. And then the Wildfire and Recovery Community and Economic Development Policy Administration is recommending to remove this item. We haven't delivered it. I've asked for an update from staff, and they report that the original intent of the RFD last fall was to align this concept with the intake for our regular Community Economic Development Fund. That's obviously passed, that intake point is passed. We have since been using policy F104, our relationship with external groups policy, to handle these types of relationships. And we have established agreements where necessary with funders, including in cases where we're involved with other external groups. The process has so far been effective. We've also been reviewing with the funders table, so the outside bodies that are looking to fund initiatives in Jasper. A part of the concept before was that there may need to be a flow through from those funders to the municipality in order to enable delivery to the local entity or person. And that it may be helpful for there to be sort of a one window approach to doing that. The funders, we are working with a number of, highly capable and experienced funders like the Red Cross, for example, who have, well-established programs for how they accept applications and have no difficulty in having those direct relationships with organizations or individuals that they might choose to fund. So administration is really advising that as the time has passed, we don't see a need for this approach of having a separate fund. The Community Economic Development Fund that existed prior to the wildfire still continues to serve its purpose. There is no need to establish a new fund with a different purpose funded by external dollars, because those parties are able to flow through money into Jasper initiatives and groups very effectively on their own. So administration is recommending that this item could be taken off the list as well. With that, those are the updates that we would have. So administration would recommend that the motion action list be updated as presented.
Any questions for CEO Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. No question, just looking at the item climate change adaptation plan. Something I learned, and I learned this in the fall, but it came back to me yesterday, what our friends down in Banff are doing. They've raised their parking rates by $2 an hour coming into the season. That extra money is going directly into their climate change resiliency reserve. That's going to raise about $900,000 for them this year, but they're going to use that money for protection trailers, more efforts around critical infrastructure, protecting critical infrastructure, and more efforts around fire smarting. I know this is not, I took the opportunity because it says climate change right there that I felt like I could talk about this, but I think it's a really neat idea, and I just wanted to put it out there.
Any other comments on the motion action list? Would someone like to make a motion to accept the amended motion action list? Councillor Wilson, and all in favor? We move on now to item 9, Councillor upcoming meetings. Has anyone got something to report?
I have two matters, I guess. Two matters, one though, perhaps just upcoming events, but I've been asked to speak at the opening of BuzzFest this year under the title Creative Fire, that's happening in this building, and in fact using this very space in addition to JAG. Friday evening at 6 o'clock it begins, so just an opportunity for council and community to gather and celebrate the arts. More importantly, with respect to upcoming meetings, I have received an invitation from Red Cross, and thank you to Councillor Hall for earlier in the day recognizing the great assistance that Red Cross has been in our community. I've been invited to attend their conference in Ottawa on January 29th. It's called the Ready Conference, so Ready 2025. They bring together, I think about 140 participants, a number from government. There are 5 federal agencies that will be part of that. There will be working table sessions. I've asked to go to provide a keynote address just about our experience dealing with wildfire and preparation and recovery. I believe that Red Cross is prepared to cover the expenses, but I just wanted to raise it and see whether there is any hesitancy among my colleagues for me leaving town to go to Ottawa for this purpose. It's not directly town related, and I don't think there will be any expense to the town, but it will take me away for at least 3 days, I think, and leave you, Deputy Mayor, in charge, ably assisted by the rest of the council. But I put that out there. If there's any reservation, please let me know.
I have a question.
Councillor Jordan.
Just because we're in public, why wouldn't you be claiming that? As you know, you're still representing the community as God, right? And you are cannabis mayor right now.
I just rated it. It's somewhat extraneous. And I would use the opportunity, if I'm able, to engage with federal representatives regarding our recovery. But with the state of government federally right now, I don't know whether that's going to be possible. But I will go and make my best efforts as long as council sees no objection to me doing that.
I feel you should go. I think it's great that you want to.
Any other reports or upcoming, Councillor Nodak?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I will report that tomorrow night I will be attending a Jasper Yellowhead Historical Society board meeting, as well as a community futures meeting next week. And last night or yesterday, Councillor Hall, yourself and myself attended the Jasper Recovery Advisory Committee meeting in the afternoon.
Councillor Demoda?
Yeah, Community Futures is on the 23rd. That's next week. I'm also attending a investment review committee meeting prior to that. And I'm wondering, I was looking for information on the next NETMA. I didn't see that in the upcoming events, but is there one potentially scheduled for January? Anybody here? Okay. I was trying to hope to attend that, but I don't see it anywhere, and I don't see a notice. So that's about it for me for now.
I attended the community conversation last week, and well attended, and lots of great conversations, which was and lots of information. Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much. I will be attending a library board meeting this evening. I also attended the seniors community conversation last Wednesday, which is very well attended. And I learned there that there are, speaking of Red Cross, 1,200 cases in Jasper open with Red Cross.
Councillor Wilson?
I was going to add it to upcoming events, but again, it's upcoming meetings as well. FCM is in Ottawa this year, May 29th to June 1st. I think, not sure what's going to happen with the federal government up to then, but another great opportunity that we should have some representation there. Yeah, let's just start that conversation on who's going.
Councillor Demoda?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I intend on wanting to attend. If that's I know our policy is, the current policy that we have is still based on a 3-year term program rotation, and I think that allows every councillor to attend one FCM. But now that we're in 4, you know, I'm one of those proponents of if it's within our budget, we should try to take advantage of it if it's there. I'm always open to at least on these to visit too. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything to add to upcoming events other than FCM? Then I would need a motion from someone to move into camera, and that would be from Councillor Keller, MP. All those in favor? And just to advise, unless I'm advised otherwise, that we will not be returning to any, there will be nothing more to be discussed at the table at the end of that. So thank you for that, and we'll move into camera. Oh, sorry, all in favor?